Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be with you here today. Thanks a lot for taking the time. Huge congratulations on this movie. I absolutely loved it. And I sort of felt like I had an instant nostalgia watching it, as though it was a film that I'd watched growing up, like Notting Hill or The Full Monty, you know, and the way it's so quintessentially British, the offbeat humour. For people who haven't seen it yet, though, can you give us the elevator pitch? Why should they go and watch it?
Oh, fantastic.
You're quite good at this.
I'll elevate. Eccentric millionaire, me, living on an island, decides to have a private gig, pay for a private gig by his favourite folk duo band. But unfortunately, they're not still together as a folk duo or as a romantic partnership. So he's sort of playing God, like a Geppetto figure, brings them all to his island, and then let mayhem commence. Slightly.
I like that.
Don't you think?
I like
Don't you
that.
think?
Mayhem.
Well, I mean, you told me to do it.
No, it's good.
That is what happens in the film. Yeah. Let mayhem commence.
And I believe, you know, it started life as this short film that you wrote back in Kentish Town in the 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was it that made you want to go back and revisit Herb and Charles? And what was there left to mind, do you think, to put it into a feature film?
Perfect. Shall I take this one as well?
No, I got this one. I think.
Banned from answering questions.
Well, no, it's the Let Mayhem Commence stuff. You were doing very well up to that point. I think we had a huge amount of affection for this short, and it's one that when Tim and I did gigs together, we would sometimes screen it at the end of the gig to the audience, and there's only a certain number of times you can do that without feeling like you're slightly taking the mickey, and people have paid for a live show and you're showing them a short because you're really proud of it. So I think we always wanted to come back to it. Griff was living in LA, and whenever he was in town, we'd meet up, and we'd just kind of quite mournfully, like kind of, you know, proudly, but also quite wistfully talk about this short and how we had to try and do something with it and how much we loved it and loved the characters. And surely there was a feature in it. And I think Griff was a bit frustrated with us in a like, surely there's a feature in this, guys. Yeah.
That's the thing. He was right. There was one in there.
Yeah. Just kind of, it became quite painful to sort of think about not doing it because we had such a good time.
Yeah.
You know, those things are very, as you grow older through your career, you realise that those moments where you really align with each other creatively are very rare. So I kept thinking, we got to get back there.
15 years in, he was like, where's my...
Come on, guys.
Yeah. It was a bit like that.
Get to it.
Yeah.
And obviously, from perhaps having worked together for so long, part of the joy is in the way you just kind of riff off each other. You've sort of nailed this deadpan humour, but there's also these kind of emotional beats that come in as well. Maybe you can tell us a bit about, you know, how much of yourselves might be in Herb and Charles, and how you think you kind of balance the humour and the emotional elements of the story.
I worry that quite a lot of ourselves are in Herb and Charles.
Yeah.
That's my concern. More for you than me, to be fair.
I try not to address this question. I mean, you know, there's probably, I don't know, we write it with a lot of, you know, heart and stuff. We put everything into it. So you'd hope that there is something of us in it. But then again, you know, we're just like talking about nothing for the first 20 minutes and it's just blathering. So I don't know how much of me is in that at that point. Yeah, okay, so there's probably a fair amount. But yeah, that was always the challenge, to try and get that stuff happening, which sort of should come quite easy for us because we've written a lot of sketches and a lot of stuff together, a lot of dialogue, and a lot of that's back and forth. So that was kind of our bedrock. And then that is the harder thing, to try and go, that's easier to write than something where you go, okay, now let's write something that really moves people. That's like a very difficult assignment. So we're just sort of focus on getting the characters, knowing the characters completely, and then trying to think of what that additional story would be for the feature. And yeah, having the character of Nell that Carrie Mulligan plays sort of unlocked that and, you know, allowed the film to have a bit more heart and richness, I think.
There's so much improv that goes on set. I mean, I guess even when you've got the script, there's so much that's there in the comic timing, the physical comedy. So, you know, but do you generally stick to the script itself?
Yeah, I mean, they're very accurate and disciplined about the script, actually, because I think they've worked together for so long that the rhythm of it is bedded into the screenplay. Those back and forths are very, you know, tightly timed and accurate. So it's kind of, and then within that, I think they give each other room to play around with it because they're so good at finding that together, and there's so much history between the two of them. So it's, there's always opportunities to kind of find an extra thing.
It was a very it was a very short shoot, and we didn't have a lot of time, and we had also scenes like, you know, where you're against the tide, or there's driving rain, or, you know, there's like boats, and just things that meant that we couldn't kind of muck about very much. So there are some scenes where we're just really on it, and we don't improvise a single comma.
Very joyless.
And then, yeah, and then other scenes in the house, particularly when it's just the two of us, you know, we've got a bit more liberty to muck around there.
I think we do take a pride in the writing. We like really try to make it as good as possible. And you know, you do sometimes go onto something where you're an actor in someone else's thing, and they give you the script and they go, ignore this, but it is what it is. And you're like, that's sort of not quite how we work. You know, you really, why have you got the script with you if you don't have complete belief in it, I think.
And I think it's, again, a testament to their kind of history together, but they're really, to watch them do it is a privilege, really, because they're always committed to character and story. They kind of commit to the truth in those moments. So the improv never feels like unearned, if you know what I mean. It never feels like additional buttons to a scene. They're both very generous with each other because they care about each other. And I think that comes across with that chemistry on screen.
In terms of the funny moments, did you have a favourite kind of scene or line? I felt like the running gag about the bag of coins for some reason.
Oh, the
was
coins are
really
beautiful.
tickling me.
Yeah. I don't know. I always like going in the shop. The shop was always good fun. Sean Clifford is she's fantastic. So all that stuff.
Location as well.
Yeah, it's really good. So you sort of get Sean. You get this weird shop, which was like just someone's front room that they turned into a shop, the art department, and then there's a little bit more leeway because you've got quite a controlled environment, so you can improvise a little bit more. I do remember
That was a lot of fun.
creasing up a few times in the shop.
We've had a couple of moments, because we didn't screen it to anyone, where I feel like we're losing a joke underneath a laugh. So there's one which is after the IKEA joke, and people are laughing about IKEA, and then he says, I thought it was some fans clubbing together. He says, no, one fan clubbing alone. Yeah. And we always miss that under the laugh, but that's one of my favourite
It's a nice
moments.
problem to have.
Yeah, exactly.
And you mentioned Carrie Mulligan. What was it like getting her on board and sort of transforming into this folk rock kind of star? I mean, she just plays it so wonderfully.
That was quite good getting Carrie Mulligan on board.
It was a dream, and I think shortly followed by the kind of the night sweats of like, oh my God, but that's, you know, she's a proper movie star.
We've got someone too good involved.
We're going to get found out. I think that was our immediate feeling.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful, and you know, I think she came to it with so much positivity and just loved the script, and I think was already quite familiar with our sense of humour. So it was very easy and lovely working with her. And you know, this is a small production, and it was on a remote location, so it wasn't the easiest necessarily, and she was really just so gung-ho about everything. It was great.
In terms of the takeaways from the film, I love the fact, even though you've introduced now and there is this romantic thread, it doesn't sort of fall into kind of a conventional love story, and it's very much about these two sort of lost souls sort of finding each other and helping each other in a way, and there's something quite bittersweet about the story. So what do you think people could take away from watching it?
Yeah, I don't know what they'll take away, but I think that was, when we went back to the short, I think that was the big challenge, was to develop it into a feature, but also there was something we loved about the short, that the essence of the short was two people who are just not made to get along, and then at the end they hug and something's happened. So I don't know, I think people, from what we've shown the film a few times, and people do sort of seem to respond to that, to the friendship that happens between Tom and I's characters. But you know, I don't know what they'll take away from it. I mean, people, I know it's a cliche, but people do sort of tend to say that they've laughed quite a lot, and that some of them have cried. Yeah, which is, not everyone will have that reaction, but when people do report that, you think, oh, that we've definitely done our job if that happens.
For me, it felt also just like, you know, like stripping away of the ego. You know, like there's something that can feel quite superficial about this day and age, and it's almost like through Herb's character, he sort of finds something else more meaningful.
Yeah, I hope people would sort of get that kind of message of connection, and whether it's connecting through music, which I think we share, like, you know, that commonality, which I think is magical, that as humans we all connect through watching and listening to music, and that's the kind of access point for these characters. So yeah, it's more of a kind of connection comedy than a rom-com, I guess. You know, like people really connecting. A con-com. A con-com. Yeah, it's a con-com.
New genre.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Hugh, congratulations on the film. I can't wait for everyone else to see it. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.